Hey guys, it's Dean. Welcome to the Better Man Podcast. Today's episode is an interview with Dr. Stephen Gabriel. He is an ER doctor and has a fellowship in anti-aging and regenerative medicine. What I really like about this conversation is it's a good example of courageous vulnerability and how we as men can have better, more fulfilling, more connecting conversations. We also covered how Dr. Gabriel forces himself to exercise even though he doesn't want to, why it never takes you as long as you think to learn something new. We also talk about how his experiences as an ER doctor taught him that life is unpredictable and that nothing can be taken for granted. So I really enjoyed this conversation. I think there's some great things in here. There's a lot of stuff in here for if you're struggling to exercise more, as well as what can you learn from a doctor about life, which is some cool stuff. So I hope you guys enjoy this interview, and I hope it inspires you to be a better man. Hey guys, it's Dean. Welcome to the Better Man Podcast. Today we have a repeat guest. This is Dr. Stephen Gabriel. And in the first episode, we talked about some of his beliefs, some of the concept that he's come up with overall health and wellness. And today I kind of wanted to get to know him a bit better on a personal level. So Stephen, thanks for coming back.
Yeah, thanks, Dean. It's great to be here.
Yeah. And so let's start off just for people who haven't met you yet, or for people who, it's been a while since the last episode. If you want to remind us a bit about you.
Yeah, so I am, I've got 2 kids. I'm divorced. I'm an emergency department doctor, but I went on after and did a fellowship in anti-aging and regenerative medicine. Now I'm really into the health and wellness space, and anything I can do. Kind of my approach is really what I can do to be the youngest, healthiest version of myself today. My background before this, I studied microbiology and molecular genetics at UCLA. I live in Laguna Beach, California, and I think that's kind of where I am.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So what got you interested in studying what you did at UCLA? That seems like a very complex topic, but that's also coming from a guy who I don't think I had to take I think I skipped all the science classes in college. I don't think I had to take any. No, that's not true. I took a summer course, but I took a summer course on weather and climate. That was my okay, let's get the science credit thing.
What's really funny about that comment is like my paradigm of my brain doesn't even quite fit that, because I will tell you just the opposite. When I had to take any humanities courses, I was so afraid that, like, for history, I took the history of science. I really remember doing
That's
this
funny.
because I was like, dude, I just can't leave the science.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you know what? Since learning a bit more about learning and realizing that you actually have to have passion for what you're learning about in order for it to stick, now it kind of makes a bit more sense. Like I like history, even though it can put me to sleep sometimes. I like learning history. I like learning languages, so I can stay engaged in that. But like learning about math, just can't do it.
yeah, that's so funny. Okay, so what got me into it? I think I really like learning about the details and the minutia of things. And, I didn't start off as a genetics major, but at some point I like really understanding the root cause of things. And I think it was probably like in my first year or second year that I sat around and I thought, like, hey, the core of everything, the core of all cells of life is really all at the DNA level. So I really just wanted to focus on that. And so I did that. And originally I wanted to do research. I really liked research. I was working in a lab at UCLA, and my genetics professor took me out to lunch one day and said to me, hey, you should go to medical school. This was actually in my 4th year, my last year of college. He's like, I think it's just like a better life. And so I walked into the pre-med office and said, hey, I want to go to medical school. And they said, what are you talking about? Like, people have been setting up for this for the last 4 years. Like, you
Yeah.
can't just walk in here on your 4th year and say you want to do this. And I was like, no, that's what I'm going to do now. The
Yeah.
funny thing about it is, went to medical school and then, went into emergency medicine, partly because I like this feeling of you're kind of like the MacGyver of medicine. I had this
Okay.
joke that when the plane goes down, like, you want the emergency guy. Like, do you want a radiologist on the plane? Right. So that became really cool, and then kind of went full circle, got back into genetics, and that's kind of where I am now.
Okay. Got it. Okay. So you went to med school. Did you know that you wanted to do ER, or were you more interested in the genetic side when you started, or like what was that circle?
Yeah. So again, kind of what we're just talking about, like you said, how you were avoiding the sciences.
Yeah.
I was, I was drawn. Actually, I was kind of drawn to nephrology, which is kidney stuff, because I thought it was cool and detail oriented.
Mhm.
And then I don't know what it was. I think like I always knew I was probably going to do different things like I am right now, meaning not just practice medicine. And so when I got exposed to emergency medicine, I thought, this is all really practical stuff. I like this. And because it's shift-based work and you could kind of do it anywhere, I thought,
Mm.
this is really cool with all of my other passions, because I can go, I know this really useful stuff. I like that. And I could also, like, at times, if I didn't want to work or work less or start other projects, I could do that too. So I thought it was really functional and practical. That's
Mm.
kind of how I did it.
Okay.
And I like knowing it. Like, I thought it was cool stuff to know. It's like I said, it's kind of like the MacGyver of medicine in a way.
Yeah.
That
What were
makes
some
sense.
of did you have any significant experiences as a doctor, as an ER doctor that, you know, influenced you significantly, maybe in how you live your life, or maybe in how you address, your approach to parenting, but do you have any experiences that really stick out?
Yeah. That's a good question, because I have a lot. So I'm thinking about like what's most impactful. So one of the big things, I'll just start with an overall theme, like like, this isn't about the anti-aging side, which I have some stories with that as well. But
Mhm.
like, one thing from a parenting standpoint, for like anyone who's listening who's a parent, one thing I learned is that everything happens. Like, any weird thing that, like, you think doesn't happen, does happen.
Mm.
I remember I had, God, only a few years ago, there was a kid came in from preschool who had, like, 4 years old, who had swallowed a tack off the board, like the little cork
Yeah.
boards. And the kid swallowed the tack, like, lacerated an artery in the back of their throat. And the kid came in, no one could get control of the kid's airway. There was so much blood, and the kid died. And,
Jeez.
basically these parents dropped their kid off at preschool, and 2 hours later got a call. And not to be like morose or something like that, because it's heartbreaking. And it's like one of the hardest things. What happens is, I had one kid who bit into a wire, and like whole mouth became burned. Um, the other kind of, freak accidents that happen from sports. I mean, you name it. And so one thing that I learned is, don't take anything for granted. You should be worried about safety and dumb things that happen, and things that you think can happen do happen. So
Mm.
I will share that. Those things are always really impactful to me.
Yeah.
Um, You
that
can
hits. I've
imagine.
got my wife's a physical therapist, and she's like, she knows about all the things that could happen. So she sees that in the world. And my dad
Yeah.
is a doctor, so he's also like, I could show him something like, hey, I got this cold plunge, check it out. He's like, yes, but does it have a latch? Is it like childproof somehow? Is it safe? Like he's always like,
Yeah.
is it safe somehow? And I'm always like, I don't care. It's fun. And my wife is the same way. She's like, yeah, but like, how is that going to be safe? So it's good for me to have that like counterbalance of, wait, let's be safe about this.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Like crazy stuff happens. Um, but let's like tie in just a little bit more rather than the obscure. I just wanted to point that out, not to freak people out. Just like if you're a dad or something out there, like just like think like dumb things happen. Like being careful with stuff is important.
Mm,
Um, and then, the other impactful things is that what really started getting to me was, I take a look at people's overall health. And what I mean by that is like I pick up someone's chart, see their age. And it was pretty striking to me at some point that, I could walk into one person's room who was 60 years old, who I thought was 90, right? And I could
mm,
walk into somebody else who, was 90 and told me just rolled his ankle because he's running a marathon, right?
mm,
And at some point, I really started talking to people about like, hey, what are you doing? What's your mindset? Like, what's happening? And
mm,
these are really big differences. I mean, one thing I think, especially when you're younger, you look at, hey, these people are all older and you put them in one group. It's kind of like as you get older, you look at everybody who's younger and you put them in one group. But if you go ask a 10-year-old, the difference in a 10 and a 15-year-old is dramatic, right?
mhm,
And so that same thing happens on the older end of the spectrum. The difference between 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. If you go ask a 70-year-old guy, he thinks like an 80-year-old guy is pretty old, like he's way older than him. But when you're like 30, you're like, 70, 80, they're all the same. But
mm,
that's not how people feel in that age range. And that's kind of the same thing when you look at kids, right? Like, somebody's like 15, 20, they're all the same. Go talk to a 15-year-old, he thinks a 20-year-old's ancient. So,
yeah.
you know what I'm saying by that? So, I started like in terms of seeing patients, I would talk to people and really start thinking about like how people are taking care of themselves. And there's no doubt the person who's, you know, still smoking, drinking soda, all day, eating a bunch of fried food, and not taking care of themselves, the effect of that really compounds over time and they
Mm,
have really accelerated aging. And then at the same time, somebody who's really taking care of themselves really is living a pretty vibrant life, even, 80s, 90s. And so I think some impact for me was really just, seeing the person. I mean, there's people coming to the emergency department, no doubt, who can't breathe because they have COPD or asthma. And then in the middle of their treatment, say, is there any way I can go step outside to have a cigarette? Right? Like, soon as the guy feels 5 minutes better, and you're just
mm,
like, whoa, man, like, what are you doing? Right?
yeah.
Like, are you doing anything here? And, there's other people who are like, I've got to, get it back together. I know I just had, this pain or this injury, and I got to know when I can get back into the gym. And hey, they're asking me, should I be eating this or that?
Mhm,
So I would say that being in the emergency department, you really kind of see people's like deepest humility and just how lifestyle changes. Every once in a while you walk into a room and the guy's age says, it doesn't even matter. The guy's age says 58, guy says 80. And you walk in the room and you're like, wow, you look phenomenal, right?
mm,
Like you're healthy. And, the person's like, yeah, I try to be, their whole everything, energy, demeanor
Yeah.
is, it's amazing how much people's lifestyle ends up affecting, who they are and
Yeah.
how healthy they are. So then I got really
How,
interested in that.
how much does overall, like, I don't know if mood is the right word, or just general demeanor, or just general, like, I don't want to say like optimistic versus pessimistic, but more so, do you, are you just like, if you're just not pleasant to be around versus people who are like generally try to be more upbeat and try to, be more positive, is that a difference that you notice in people who were, who seemed young for their age or who seemed old for their age?
Yeah, I mean, I would say yes, because it stems to other like choices you make, right? Like the people who see like the positive side of everything, like another tie-in with kids, like if you feel positive and lucky, like I'm going to tie that word in as well, like
Hmm.
everything you do or the way you make decisions is really like you see the upside of it, right? Versus, well, it doesn't matter if I go out and get, hammered drunk tonight because everything sucks, right?
Mm.
Like there is no future. I hate my life. Everything's bad. So you make these choices around it. Whereas the person who has this positive angle, they're making decisions that are all to lead them to the upside, right? Because even when negative things happen, they look at it and say, well, this is just a stepping stone along the way. So I could meet you and learn about that I could do this to recover faster. Like
Hmm.
they're always making the choices. Like, I don't know what came first, the chicken or the egg in that story, but there's
Hmm.
no doubt if you constantly see the positive in everything, you're looking at it like, well, of course, I have 30 more years, so I've got to be doing the best things possible right now, right? Because you're seeing the upside.
Hmm.
Whereas somebody who's constantly seeing the downside is like, well, it doesn't matter anyway. I had this friend who, you know, started bike riding and then got hit by a car, right? Like,
Mm.
so why would I even do it? Right? It's just like a different way that you approach things. So I do think that there's something to that because I will say that the people who are healthier seem to be pretty positive,
Yeah.
right? You don't really see the really negative guy coming in and like they're super healthy.
Yeah. So there's another kind of concept or phenomenon that really interests me, and it's how do people respond to kind of traumatic events. And kind of the pattern is, if you can look at a traumatic event in a certain way, if you can look at it in a certain light, um, uh, what I mean by that is, if you can look at it in a way as it has some meaning, if you can assign some meaning to it, if you can grow from it, if you can take a lesson from it, versus the people who get kind of stuck in the reliving the trauma of it, it allows you to grow from the experience and actually be better for it. And this could be things like, and for this could be things like, having a terrible injury. It could be like losing, it could be losing a limb, but like maybe you come out on the other side after you get, after you eventually move through that. Maybe you come out on the other side and you're actually a lot happier than you were before because you had some realizations. I'm wondering, have you had any patients where you've got to see that in action, where it's someone who came in, had this life-changing experience, and then you saw them like a year later and they say something like, "Oh yeah, it was the best thing that ever happened to me." Or do you have any experience with seeing that happen?
Yeah. So that's interesting. And there's a study about this. But yes, I will say one thing for people who have become like paraplegic or quadriplegic, there's one question I always ask, which is, how did it happen? Right? Like, because a lot of people kind of skirt that question, even in medicine, because this happened 20 years ago. It's not really relevant to today's story.
Hmm.
And one thing that I find in that population of people is that one, they're happy that you asked. because if you can imagine, it is the biggest event in their life by a long shot.
Mm.
The other thing about it is they remember every detail to the second. So, the guys who fell off the roof or whatever, they're like, I misstepped. I saw myself sliding down. I couldn't grab the rain gutter because it was this. As I was going down, I could see the planter on the bottom. I knew I was going to hit. Like, I'd almost say for anyone, like if you're with somebody who's had a big event in their life, in a way, in my experience, they like to be asked about it. In terms of attitude, what I found is that the people, yes. So people, let me tie it in this way. The people who were positive people before become positive people after. It might take a year of time to adjust to the situation, and the people who were negative before stay negative after. So there's kind of an emotional home that people tend to have. And there's actually been a study on this. And what they found is that most people think that the best random event that could happen to them is win the lottery. Okay. Like if you just go around and survey people.
Sure.
And what they find when they talk to those people is that after they win the lottery, the negative people are really happy, right? Like right after. The month after, they're really happy. But if you go to them a couple years after, they're negative again. They go back to where they were, right?
Yeah.
And the wild thing is most people think that the worst thing that could happen to you is actually get in an accident and become like a quadriplegic. That's kind of like the worst event most people associate with. Those people, they find the same thing. After the event, they're pretty depressed and down. But if you go to those people a year or two after, they go back to, if they were positive people before, they're positive people again. They get back to kind of where their emotional home is. So I would encourage everyone to work on a positive emotional home, because what you find is no matter what external event happens to you, you will be happy again.
So people generally turn to whatever level of homeostasis they have for their outlook or their...
Yeah, that's my experience. And there's a study that shows that.
Yeah. I'm reading the Arthur Brooks Oprah book again because I really like it. I can't remember what it's called, but it talks about this, and it talks about the author himself, Arthur Brooks. I'm Googling it. I just want Build the Life You Want, is what it's called. But the author talks about how he's generally a more moody guy. His dad was a more moody guy, and so one day his wife says, like, you're a happiness scientist. Why don't you apply some of these things to your life and you start doing, some of these things that you're reading about? And so for me, when I think about, what is people's general outlook on things? Are they positive? Are they negative? There's definitely a part of that is genetics. Like, you're just like,
No doubt.
this is my mood, right? Or this is, and then it's kind of up to you to figure out, well, this is my genetics. This is the hand I've been dealt. What can I still do with this? But, then again, like some people's genetics put them into a position where they don't have the same like outlook that I do. They don't look at something and say like, oh, there's a possibility there. Like, oh, there's an opportunity there. There's something, they're much less likely to see the situation that I would see it, or that someone who has like a more optimistic, thing would say it. So I guess it's to say like, yeah, it could be harder for you, but also like you still have the opportunity.
Yeah, yeah, you still do have the opportunity, and you're right. It does take a conscious effort. You almost have to like disengage with yourself a little bit, and not overthink it if you're that type of person. Like sometimes I've learned just in my own life experiences whether that is, honestly, in the hospital, something bad happens to somebody and other people are frustrated that they're waiting. And, I tend to feel a lot of empathy. And so it's hard for me when I've disappointed someone. And so I will almost like trick my brain into just doing the action over thinking about it. One thing that I find is that a lot of us try to think our way to do something. And really, you find that if you just start doing it, you will continue doing it rather than analyze your way into doing it. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if you can like follow this, and I don't know if you're a fan or not, but I went to Tony Robbins a couple times. This was actually at the time of my divorce, and I hadn't even heard of the guy. But as a tie-in for that, if anyone's done it, in one night, at least of the seminar I did, this probably more than 10 years ago now. But in one night, they have you walk on like the hot coals.
Yeah.
And one thing that they have you do is you doing this chant with everyone saying, cool moss, cool moss. He tells you to use this word, right? And so what you're really trying to do, I learned after, is distract your brain from thinking about it. So you're all outside chanting, cool moss, cool moss, cool moss. And what it does is it takes your brain away from actually, holy crap, I'm going to walk on 2,000 degree coals, right? And so I almost use this technique now. Like, I think I was telling you, I really don't love exercising, even though I go. And I kind of do a similar thing. I try not to think like, oh, I'm going to the gym to work out or I'm going to go get on my Peloton. I almost do like a cool moss thing. I try to think of something totally different as I know my body walks to the bike, puts my shoes on and gets on. But I'm not thinking about it. It's kind of like I trick my brain a little bit because I know once I start doing it, I'm going to do it. So this is kind of what we're talking about, going like full circle to what you were saying, which is, there's other guys who love working out, right? They love it. And so for them, they don't have to do this trick. But if there is something that you want to achieve that you just know isn't you or is hard for you, whether that is like you with the sciences, the beginning, me with the humanities, working out, eating healthy, approaching a girl, whatever it is, like distract yourself, but do the action. And I think that trick, at least for me, has worked out. If I may, I'm going to tie in one story with a patient that I won't forget. And that is that I saw this guy who was from jail and he comes into the ER and it doesn't really matter what he was there for. He's having some belly pain, but the guy was just ripped, right? And they were telling he's handcuffed to the bed and the guy's really ripped guy. And there's officers in the room. They're telling me he's kind of a dangerous guy. And they tell me he's in solitary confinement. And so I tell the guy, I'm like, I just like to start talking to people. I love hearing everyone's story. And so I'm talking to the guy and I say, dude, how are you staying so fit and solitary? Right? Like, he's a big dude. Yeah. And he says, I've worked out my whole life. It's a must for me. Yeah. And he says, I take my shirt off and tie it to the bars and you do like a TRX, right? Yeah. And I'm doing my push-ups, I'm doing my sit-ups. He's like, I got to tell you, since I was like 13, 14 years old, I've never not worked out. I don't care where anyone puts me, I'm working out. And the story really hit me because it's a must for him, right? Like, and that's a lot of things in life. Like, you do the things that are musts for you, right?
Yeah. Cool. It's a cool story.
Yeah.
More questions, but I'd rather ask you about how this has kind of impacted, I mean, especially like the everything happens mentality, kind of going back to that and just realizing that whole, stuff happens, stuff that you would never believe. And I'm wondering, how has that affected how you are as a parent? Like, what is that? Um, what has that inspired you to try to teach or instill in your kids?
Yeah. And you're saying with regards to everything happens.
Yeah. Or if you want
Yeah.
to talk about
So
another experience that you've had that that's something else that you've learned that from your experience as an ER doctor that has led you to behave a certain way as a parent.
yeah, because it hits me with two different things. So I'm going to say, in terms of, I'm going to start with one and then I'm going to go to another with everything happens. So
Hmm.
one thing that I've learned just going through from, hey, I'm going to apply to medical school, my fourth year of college, when they said, what are you doing? You can't do that,
Hmm.
to um, kind of like what learned I was able to learn in short amounts of time. Um, and that is, my kids are, I have a daughter who is now 18, who just graduated from high school and is going to UCLA next year. And my son is 15 and a freshman. And one tie-in that I learned through my just studies or academic life experience was that everything can be done and much quicker than you ever thought. And so you might as well learn that as quickly as possible. And one way I did that with my kids is I had them each take the SAT when they were 12. I know
Hmm.
everyone's probably thinking, like, what kind of parent are you?
No,
More to
it's
just
cool. It's
focus on
unique.
math. And the way I did it, if you can imagine, is I got my kids like the math. I said, let's just focus on one section. And I said, you can learn all of this math. It's really not much material in like 2 or 3 months. Like, I know you're not even in algebra yet, but honestly, this isn't a lot of material, because what I learned at each stage of my education was that, like in high school, I learned, and I think everyone can relate to that one, what I learned in grade school was nothing, right?
Hmm.
And then in college, I learned, wow, what I did in high school wasn't much. And then when I went to medical school, I remember thinking, wow, in 2 days, we just covered what I covered in college in a whole quarter. And something triggered in my mind that, why didn't I just learn? I could learn all this quickly at the beginning. Now, maybe you have to go through the process, but I'm one to like, hey, just how do I accelerate these things? So with my kids, the one thing that I've taught them is, this is not much. Don't be overwhelmed by it. This can all be done in a couple days. Honestly, it's nothing.
Hmm.
And so I did this process with my kids with the SAT, not to learn about math, but to learn that a couple 100-page book can all be mastered in just 2 to 3 months. And even though you think that that's 3 years of high school material, it's really not that much time. So um, we did that, and both the kids did really, really good on the math part. And they had this experience of showing up there as little kids when all these high school kids are there looking at you
Hmm.
like, what are you doing here? Right?
Oh,
Like, so they had
that'd be
that.
so intimidating.
Yeah. So they had this whole experience. So that's one big thing I learned from my personal experience, to kind of learn, like, you can accelerate learning in anything. My son's a soccer player. I try to do that with that as well. Like, dude, how do we like move up multiple levels in a short amount of time? Like, and I talk to other people sometimes, like, how did you do it? Because a lot of times people have already done things. Like, I might talk to you about how did you get that fit, right? And you might like tell me, hey man, this is what you got to do. You got to lift heavy and you got to do it 4 days a week. I'm just telling you, let me just get you there and share what I learned in 3 years and get you there in 1 month, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I'm kind of big on that. The second part of your question is on the anything happens. So in terms of my kids, not with my daughter because she's not really like a risky person, but my son is, if anyone has a teenage boy, you know that their assessment of risk on average is poor. So, this guy, there's like this wall in my neighborhood that's, I don't know, like 12 feet high, that's near the beach, that he gets up on and jumps off of.
Yeah.
And he plays soccer, and I'll say to him, why do you do that? You're going to like break your ankle, right? And he'll say to me, yeah, but I just did it and I didn't break my ankle. Or he used the same logic. I actually finally just got rid of the e-bike. By the way, one big thing I saw in the ER, I mean, there were days where I was getting 2 or 3 e-bike accidents in a day. Bad.
Wow.
And I'm just like, this is just dumb. Like, my kid's not having this anymore.
Is it the ones that like you rent with an app, or is it like their e-bike? Do you know? Both. Okay.
Yeah. Like sometimes like deaths, like crazy stuff. Yeah. And like, and that's shielded from everyone else, right? But at one point I'm like, and the same thing, like my son's like, no, I'll be careful. And then I'd see him like riding full speed on the opposite side of the road. And, they're trying to do wheelies. And I'm just like, you know what? We don't need to do this. So I'll tie this in right now. We've been talking about him going to this soccer camp, and they stay in this house where there's a pool. And I know my kid, he does backflips into pools, and especially if there's other guys there.
Yeah.
And it's really, so how does it influence me? I'm like nervous all the time with him. Like anytime he's out with his buddies, I'm warning him, or like he doesn't put his seatbelt on and tells me, Dad, I don't wear my seatbelt all the time. Nothing happens. Like the mentality is just unbelievable. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, everything happens. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. Well, that story of the jumping off the 12-foot thing, I broke 3 metatarsals when I was 10 or 11 doing that. And I think the first time I did it, I was fine. The second time I did it, I landed. I was like, oh, that hurt. And then like within like, I got to the bus, got home. And then within like 20 minutes of that, I was calling my mom crying. I'm like, something's wrong. And she had to come home and take me to the emergency room. But I have done plenty of those things. And yeah, as you've gotten older, the body is less able to repel things. Now, like there's stupid things that I get injured from. Like I put my shoe on too quickly and I, might get a back tweak, and it takes me a week to fix that.
Yeah.
Or like you shower wrong and then you're like, oh, I was reaching to grab my back and I tweaked my back that way. Now it's like stupid injuries from nothing.
Yeah. That this is like partly genetic, especially in young men, that when they really like analyze their brains, they really have no way to assess risk. I mean, it's like me telling you, like, why don't you go fly right now? It's like not possible. Like you really can't. I actually think that there was a species purpose to this. This is how you got, like in your tribe, right? Young men would go out looking for resources, whether that's pillaging villages to give more land, finding food, attacking the boar, defending the colony. Like, if you thought the way you do now, you would never go out and do that stuff. So all these like really able-bodied young guys were like, yeah, let's go do it. You know what I mean? Like, they really can't see how dangerous it was.
Yeah. I mean,
I think there's a purpose.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that makes me feel a lot better about my, my age 10 through 20, 23, 24, maybe 25. Yeah, it took a while. It took a while to stop.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah, like, it's crazy when you think about yourself. Like, I'm sure all the guys listening, like, when you think about yourself in that age range, you're like, how did I even make it?
Yeah.
Right? Like, how did I make it?
So there's one other part of, something from your story that I wanted to bring up and ask about. So when you had that conversation with your professor and he said, hey, you should go to med school, and you went to your advisor and they're like, what do you mean you want to go to med school? It's too late. Has that always been a mentality that you approach things with? And if so, where did that come from?
Oh, good point. You mean like, somebody saying you can't do this and you saying,
Right.
yes, I can?
Right.
Yeah, I kind of don't think anything well, I wouldn't say that about physical things. I got to be like honest about it. Like, but I would say with like school related things, academic type of things, I'd even say like right now, like starting my business, doing the anti-aging, I kind of see it like the way that I talk about with my kids. Like when I said, you guys can go do the SAT, even though you're way younger, like nothing's really a big deal. Like, there's nothing kind of out of reach in terms of projects, challenges. Like, I always think everybody has the same amount of hours in the day. So like, even let's say just, it's easy to talk about it because people talk about money, but like there's physical performance, right? There's relationship performance, there's spiritual performance, there's financial performance. Financial one's easy one to talk about because there's numbers, and so it's easy to talk about numbers, So like we could talk about like Jeff Bezos or something, right? Like somebody who's like richer than like like most people.
Yeah.
And say, like, I look at it and say, look, he's got the same amount of hours in his day as you or I do, right? So it's not like, oh my God, I don't want to work like him. He's working all the time. Like what decisions, if that is your goal, and I'm not saying it is because I don't think that that's everyone's goal, but if that was your goal, what decisions are people doing in the same amount of time that you have that are accelerating this? Just kind of like what I was talking to you about working out, right? So like there are people who are really efficient at moving the needle really effectively in a quick way, and you should find out what those people are doing. I will say that usually the thing in my experience of things that I've done, it's not like how to get there is usually pretty readily available. If you Google it or walk into Barnes and Noble, it's, do you have that feeling of, let's go full circle, of walking on the hot coals, overcoming some of the things that seem to block you and turning it into a must for you, like my guy who worked out in solitary confinement, so that you actually want to go and do that. Usually the way to get there is like pretty readily available. When you say that, like if I want to talk to you about like your fitness, right, your health, like you would tell me, hey, Steve, this is what I do.
Yeah.
And it'll work for you.
I mean, especially now with information overload, yeah, it's mainly just figuring out, well, which information do I pay attention to and which do I ignore, rather than getting bogged down in all the information and doing nothing.
Yeah. Like doing it and executing and deciding that's going to be your new path is harder than getting the information that needs to be done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? Like the decision of the change.
Yeah. And in that case, we want to cool moss ourselves into
Yes.
just starting to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, we all do the same pattern every day for the most part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So changing that pattern, super hard.
Right. Totally. And then we have things that are musts. And then, yeah, I think being able to think about, well, like this is something I just did a video a couple of days ago about how to change nice to haves into non-negotiables, because it's something that comes up a lot within our community. Like they do other workouts or they have other healthy habits, but then they can't be consistent with their yoga because they're just thinking about it as a nice to have. So my advice there is to figure out, well, what are some of the commonalities, or like what are some of the themes you notice in those things that you do on a non-negotiable basis, on a regular basis, something that you do every day, or something that is your non-negotiable, and how can you take that mentality and then apply it to these things that are nice to haves. And for some of us, it's these musts are the things that we're very strongly motivated to do. It's not even a question of whether or not we do it. So it'd be like me trying to figure out, well, how do I make science how do I make learning science like a must instead of a nice to have?
Yeah. So one thing that I try to link my brain to on this, which is, especially with the working out, which I will say that I am doing like 3-4 days a week. But I really have had to play a lot of mental games with myself, truthfully. And one of them that I say to myself is, I seem to always find time every day to go to the bathroom, right?
Mm.
Everyone finds, like, I'm kind of being sarcastic with that, right? Because you have to do it, right? I have to go to the bathroom, I have to go poop, whatever, I'm going to go sit on the toilet, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you find this 10 minutes or whatever to do this. And so I'm like, that's really a non-negotiable for me, right? Like when I have to go, I've got to go, right?
Yeah.
I seem to fit it in no matter when I need to do it, right? Like I fit it in. And so then I'm like, so how can I tell myself that I can't, whether that's yoga, meditate, cardio, strength, right? How can I find 10 minutes to do one of those? Like, even at the end of the night, I find myself saying, there's no way I couldn't find myself 10 minutes. Sometimes even before I go to bed, I'll be like, well, it's not good to really get my heart rate up right before I go to bed. So why don't I go do a meditation right now? Because like there's another day that I might scroll on my phone 10 minutes before I go to bed, which is terrible for you. So I certainly can fit this in right now. And then we might have talked about it on the last time, but one of the things I find, and this is going back to getting started, is that once you do something for 10 minutes, you'll often find that it turns into 20 or 30, right? Even if it's yoga. I've even found myself with yoga saying, I don't feel like walking in there. And I literally give myself permission. If I still hate this and I don't want to do it after 10 minutes in the class, I'm going to walk out of the class. That's how I'm going to go into this. I'm just going to go in for a 10-minute yoga session. And you know what? There's never been one time that I've walked out of the class.
Yeah.
But I can trick myself into thinking 10 minutes, I can go do yoga for 10 minutes. So I try to do all these little mental mind games with myself to get started, because getting started with anything, whether that's my kids starting to study for the SAT, whether that's me working out, whether that's you taking a science class, whatever it is, the real obstacle I find is getting started. And then I find that if you can trick yourself into that, and doing it a few days, once you do it for like a week or two, then you kind of get into a habit.
Yeah. Perfect. All right. Well, I think that's great closing advice. So thank you for coming on again. I enjoyed our
Thank you.
conversation again. I like that you got to share some of your experience with the, terrifying me of what could happen to my children while they're at daycare and school, which is good to know. And I think also for people listening who struggle with the motivation to exercise and some of those strategies, I think that'll help them too. So thanks for sharing that. Big sip of coffee. Sweet.
Yeah, there's no coffee. Amazingly, I have water in my
right.
coffee cup.
Yes, you're
I don't drink coffee.
The only doctor in the world who doesn't drink coffee. Amazing.
Yeah, I don't drink coffee.
Yeah.
As another story.
Probably better for it. So, all right. Well, guys listening in, I hope you appreciated this conversation. I hope it inspires you to be a better man, and I will see you on the next episode. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this interview. Be sure to check out Dr. Stephen Gabriel. He is on Instagram if you want to follow him there. There's also other links here in the show notes if you want to check more about him and what he does. If you enjoyed this podcast, I want to encourage you to leave a review. You can do that on Apple Podcast, on Spotify. You can watch video versions of the podcast on YouTube or in the Manful Yoga app and members area. If you're part of our community, I want to say thank you for being part of Manful Yoga. If you're considering joining, go to manfulyoga.com/join to learn more and get a free 7-day trial. And if you're not quite ready for that, but you do want to start integrating some yoga into your life, I've got a free 7-day challenge, no credit card required, which you can sign up for at manfulyoga.com/7DC. Thank you guys for being here. I hope these episodes are helpful to you. I hope these interviews are beneficial, and I hope they're inspiring you to be a better man. I'll see you on the next episode.